Welcome back to the $1 Million Tipping Point podcast. Today on our show, we have Liz Faircloth. Liz, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Liz co-founded the DeRosa Group in 2005 with her husband, Matt. The DeRosa Group, based in Trenton, New Jersey, is an owner of commercial and residential property with a mission to transform lives through real estate. DeRosa controls $60 million of residential and commercial assets up and down the East Coast. Liz is the co-founder and CEO of the Real Estate InvestHER community, co-host of the Real Estate InvestHER Show, and recently published InvestHER's first book, Only Woman in the Room, Knowledge and Inspiration from 20 Successful Real Estate Women Investors. So again, thank you for being on this show. And I do want to say for our audience, if you're listening, which most of you are, you can't read. Investor is actually an awesome play on words. It's invest her. So invest, H-E-R. So cool. Love that so much. Thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. It's so great to be here and connect with you and connect with all the women listening and men too.
Yes. Mostly women, but we do have a few men. So I do want to talk about obviously your career and how you got here. So when I was doing my research on you, I found that you actually went to grad school for social work. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Yeah, that's such a famous book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And you co-founded DeRosa Group with your husband in 2005, right?
Yes.
So that, from my research, also sounds like he quit his job, and just jumped into this. And you were the one that was kind of keeping the financial wheels moving with your role, right? Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah.
Also about that mentality of him quitting his job, and that's scary.
Within the same month of us getting married, 2005, and then within the same month, he quit his job. Right. So we got married and quit his job. When we met, when you meet people, it's like you really get a chance to get to know their values. Or if you go there, right, there's some couples that may not ever go there. But the one thing my husband and I always had in common when we met, I think what really attracted us was the both of us had an interest in really creating a big life, helping a lot of people, and just living life on our own terms, doing things that were a little different than most people, most people living kind of in the quote unquote normal life. So we had that in common. And I think that's always helpful, is to know where you're aligned, where your values are aligned. And we both had that entrepreneurial spirit, even to a fault where you don't pay yourself enough, right? To the nth degree. But we had that entrepreneurial spirit where we both had that idea of like, what can we build? And that, so we create our own destinies, and we're the ones that are ultimately responsible for what's happening. So when we first met, that was the case. And we both came upon, I got introduced to real estate, in investing as a kind of a vehicle, if you will, from my brother-in-law. Gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was going to be a therapist. I wanted to open my own counseling center and wanted to really, really, help women in particular, which was interesting. 20 years ago, I had that passion of helping women that were had a mental illness, were emotionally dealing with a lot, and really create a center. That was one of my ideas. I actually started a business plan to help women in that space, and kind of quickly learned through the research and the real estate investing courses and just starting to unravel that I really wanted to learn more about business and sales, because I was a social worker background. I was a psych major. I had no business background, if you will. And that was one of the things that's in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Beyond real estate, it talks about how important it is to know how to sell and influence people if you want to start a business. So I had that idea immediately out of grad school, not to get a traditional social work job, which was hard, right? I got a master's degree at Penn, University of Pennsylvania. So it was not cheap. So most of my colleagues, I think I was the only one that ended up not getting a particular job in the sector of what I literally am getting my master's degree in. So I got a job in basically consulting small businesses to help them to really learn. I learned a personality assessment to help them grow their business. And I did that for about a decade. I sold the assessment tool. I taught, I facilitated workshops. And I was like, basically when I left, I was like the key consultant helping many companies hire the right people, develop teams. That was my expertise for many years, while my husband quit his job and pretty much focused on our business from scratch. We didn't have any sort of anything to start with. We just started literally from scratch.
That's amazing. And how did that, I mean, to give up your social work, I mean, I hate saying give up, right?
Yeah.
But like, how did that feel? Because I too come from a background where I'm doing nothing with my degree. And I remember it like tore me up when I made the decision, or when I was struggling to make the decision. Let's say that once I made the decision, it was fine. But how did you know this was like the path that you guys really wanted to take? Was there any kind of discussion like, hey, why don't you try this, to your husband, Matt, and I'll keep doing this just in case? Or was it always like, no, we really, really want to do this, and we're just going to work to a point where I can also quit my consulting role?
The latter. So what we did in 2005 was, and really the financial decisions we made, where to live, what kind of house to buy. We weren't like most people where you get into these high expenses and you're like, oh no, how are we going to walk away from this lifestyle? Which I think is really hard, right? When you have people have a certain lifestyle that they're kind of accustomed to, the home, the house. So we ended up buying a home that I could take care of financially on my own. It was a row home. It was like a townhome. It was nice, spacious, but one of those houses that are bigger vertically than horizontally. Yeah. And it was a really cute little place in New Jersey outside of a little small town. So it was like a walkable town where you can go to little restaurants. It's perfect for him and I. And we didn't have children for many years. So it worked for us. It was just him and I. And we always said, if literally we're reinvesting our investments and we hit a downturn, which we did, or we just don't literally make any money from our investments as a strategy, I can take care of the bills. I can handle all of the bills coming in with my one salary. And that was the case for many years, to be perfectly frank. We would flip properties, we were buying rentals, we were learning, we were in our 20s, figuring it out. And there's so many 20-year-olds that are getting interviewed now, right? That they're like, I just, got 1,000 units overnight and I'm a millionaire now. That wasn't our path. We just hit a lot more roadblocks, a lot more challenges, just didn't give up and kept saying, what could we do better? What do we need to let go of? And then that's been the journey, right? 16 years later, but we made some good decisions up front to delay gratification and not get the quote unquote new lifestyle that most young couples get. Have kids, get the big home. That wasn't our path. The house we live in is, we moved once since then and it's a lovely home now, but we didn't start with this house, so.
It's similar to us, except minus all the real estate investing. Talk to me a little bit about though, that like first 10, 15 years, and the struggles that you face, because real estate, I feel like, is not for the faint of heart. And this interview is actually one of the interviews I'm least confident going into because I'm terrified of real estate. I hate even saying that, but like I bought 2 houses in my life, and just 2 houses were enough to make me, it was so stressful. It was so stressful. So it's not for the faint of heart. So did you learn everything from Rich Dad Poor Dad, or was that just really the catalyst and the starting point that you were like, okay, we need to learn more? And talk to me just like about this path until you really met Andresa, who we will talk about in 2014.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for us, it was, I always say you learn by your mistakes. You can learn through a mentor, a coach. You're going to pay somewhere for further learning. You're either going to do it on your own dime, or you're going to pay for the education so you can cut down your own mistakes. There's no right or wrong. We definitely did not pay for any sort of coaching program, any sort of, mentorship. A lot of what we've even created right now in terms of like a membership and helping women in investing. I wish we had that. I wish I had that. So we learned.
So you regret that then? Sorry to interrupt.
Regret. I mean, it's interesting, right? Regret is an interesting one. It's, could that have cut down on our mistakes and timeline? Possibly, but did it make us who we are? And now I value going to experts so much more now. I don't know if I would have had that confidence, or said, should we be doing this? I come from a family of very, very hard workers. So if you want something, you work hard to get it. There's no like who, not how do I do less? Like it was just like all hands on deck, roll up your sleeves, make it happen kind of family. Right. So that was like my DNA. So, and same with my husband. So long story short, we really started to say, what courses can we take? So we did take courses. We went to like the local RIA meetings, and we did start to surround ourselves with like-minded people and say, what's a better way to do this? So we started buying rentals in New Jersey. We started flipping houses in New Jersey. And then we, over the course of our tenure, we started to make different decisions on market. It's really about market. It's about the strategy that you're employing. Are you buying commercial? Are you buying residential? And then it's also like what's happening in the economy, right? So obviously some say we're in a recession right now. Some say we're about to get into a deeper recession. You know, buying real estate as an investment it can be always a good time, but you need to know how to buy it. And you also need to know the strategy around it. In other words, what you're trying to do may not align with what's happening in the local economy or the global economy. We had no idea about any of that, right? When we started, we're just like, we can afford to buy here. Let's buy it. You know, that was the litmus test for us. So, but over the years, we got smarter with market, and we got smarter with partners. And then we started to leverage what we did well, and then really lean into, okay, we raise money, we're finding new buildings, we really know where our value is. And then we leveraged kind of buying larger apartment complexes in areas that are growing, and then in adding value to those. But we were all over the place at the beginning, and that really limited our growth. Again, we didn't know what we didn't know.
For those of the audience who don't really understand what raising money entails with real estate,
Sure.
Can you go into that?
Yeah, sure. So many people, so many people think that you have to buy property with your own money. Obviously, you need someone's money, right? Money is essential in purchasing real estate, especially on the investing side. But there's a lot of creative ways to structure projects. Now, I don't recommend this to somebody who's never had any education in real estate investing, right? To go out and go take your uncle or aunt's hard-earned money and go throw it down on a property. I think that's a horrible idea. You need to know what you're doing, and you have to be a very good steward of money, right? And that's critical. However, as we started to get a proof of concept, we bought some rentals. We started to see what was working. We said, okay, we had about probably about 40 units under our belt. We said, okay, we've been tapped. You know, this is around 2010. We started to really get good at buying properties, renovating it, getting tenants in there, and then doing it over again, right? We started to get like that proof of concept, if you will. So at that point, we were talking to a friend, and we partnered on a deal. And we were both active partners. But he was in particular putting in he put money in, and also had another role, auditing the books. And then we were like the boots on the ground, making sure contractors are there, making sure everything is doing what had to happen to renovate a single family home at the time. So we did that together. Then we refinanced the property, and we're able to pull the money out that we put in, and we did it again and kept getting, the cash flow from it. So by private money or creative financing, there's tons of ways, but certainly partnering with people or having people lend you money, lending or equity are the two ways to do it. Not to get into too much detail, but it's a great strategy for those who have maybe bought some properties or, have some proof of concept, and they're just like, okay, how do I do more of this? But I just don't have the money myself.
I don't want to distract from the main thing too much.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this. So, but then how do you pay them back if you just keep on buying more and more property?
Okay, two different ways. If they're a lender, you pay them back. It's like a note, right? That you're creating a promissory note with them to say, okay, at the end of 6 months, 12 months, usually 12-month time frame, I'm going to pay you back your 50 grand plus 8% interest or 9%, whatever you've negotiated, right? The going rate is. So you're able to pay them back principal and interest by some sort of exit. You're either refinance a property or you're selling a property.
Okay.
Those are the typical two ways you can pull that cash out as a lender. That person's not a partner. They're literally lending you money just like anyone would be lending. It's a private money lender in essence. It's privately done through, and there's paperwork and legal paperwork. What's nice about that is you're often putting collateral. Your collateral is the property, right? That's the beautiful thing about real estate. So it's not just like, you have this business idea and I'm lending you money on the next greatest thing. You're literally lending on a great asset can be collateralized. In terms of equity is a little trickier because you're kind of going partnership with people. You're arm in arm. You're starting that LLC together or whatever that business entity together, just like you would be in any business, right? And in essence, so in terms of our strategies that we typically bought properties that needed a lot of work. So you're adding the value of that property and raising the value up. So it might be worth 300, but you're buying it maybe at 150 and putting 50 in, and you have enough room to refinance that property, pull that person's 50 grand out, and then do it again. So now you're buying something that is 300,000, you're buying it at 250. and you're not putting any money down, no, you're not going to get that person's. Now that's the agreement. That's fine. But that wasn't our agreement with these folks. That's how you're able to pull that money out through a refinance. So one's a sale, one's a refinance, either or you have to pull in a lender's perspective, you have to pull that money out or you're going to be paying interest indefinitely, which is going to kill you.
Yeah. Okay. I think my friend actually, no, it does. I think my friend actually has an LLC. She does some investing, and I'm going to totally recommend your site if she hasn't already found it.
Raising Private Capital. And not to give a shameless plug to my husband, but he wrote a book for Bigger Pockets called Raising Private Capital that basically goes into our journey of how we worked with private money and how to do it on a small scale and not in a big scale. So just to give a shameless plug, if anyone's listening that has any intrigue in this, like, $15 on Amazon. So
we will put it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Talk to me a little bit about 2008, because 2008 was a housing crash, and it sounds like you started in 2005. So,
well, ironically, in 2008, I also quit my job, and we weren't making enough income to even take care of us, financially.
Oh, no.
We had savings at the time. I think we had $60,000 in savings. We're like, it's plenty of money to get us through to whatever for a year. We kept our expenses low. Now with kids in a different house, our expenses are not. So I wish I would miss those days of our expenses being 60 grand. But anyway, what's helpful though there is that I said, listen, let's give this a go. Let me come on board. Let's really build up the business. And then the market crashed. So those things all happened together. And we bought a vacant commercial building that was 10,000 square feet and did not have a tenant for it. So there was a lot of fun things that happened for us in 2008. I think what was helpful was it really gave us an idea. Like, I think this is also just a quick tip for those who are interested in real estate or really any business, is to have multiple exit strategies or multiple ways to do something. So if you have a product or a service, this is your goal with it, but what can be other ways to deploy it? Meaning, we bought a property to flip, a number of them, and we couldn't flip them because of that, especially that time. We're not dealing with the economy and the housing market we are in now, right? Where every inventory is low. Inventory was high, and there's so many foreclosures at the time. So we converted those to rentals. So we didn't completely, kill ourselves or our business, but we had to pivot. So it's always helpful to have multiple kind of ways to work projects. If you have to shift, especially now, right? People are getting buildings and properties that are short-term rentals, and everyone's trying to get a vacation rental and make it work there. It's really helpful to run numbers if it has to be a long-term asset or a long-term rental, so that something changes out of your control, you have a backup plan, and you've thought about that is always our recommendation. So we really, at that time, had so many disconnects, and we got to the point where my husband and I were fighting so much too. We were financially strapped. The market was not helping, and we were, just really at each other's throats. So we had to change something big time, even like the point of like, if we don't do something, we're going to get a divorce. Like, this isn't good for our marriage. It's not good for our business. So we took our own advice and started to delineate roles. I also ended up going back to the job I left in 2010. So from 2008, 2010, I stayed in the business trying to do different things and work on different things. In 2010, I went back to what I was doing. I actually literally went back to the same exact job I left.
So the consulting.
Yep.
With the profiles.
Yep.
Okay.
Exact same role. My old boss was just like, yeah, come on back. No problem. Okay. And I went back to that work. And it was tough, right? You kind of feel like you're taking a step back. Here you went, I had a big going away party. And, but I always say it's important. It's not a step back, it's a step sideways. So at that point, we then really strategically decided to focus on multifamily, because we were a little bit all over the place prior, commercial, flipping. And for the first 5 years, I'd say we were figuring it out. And in 2010 was really, we kind of hit our stride and saying, let's buy small multi and really focus on this. That's all we do. And then we started to do that with partners, the partner that I just said to you. And then we started to get into larger deals where we went from 6 units to 10 units to 15 units to, then the growth kind of happens steadily where we get into, hundreds of units now. That's our focus. But it was because of that focus that helped us get there.
And did you hire a team when this started growing? At what point did you hire a team?
So, we were under the model of doing more partnership models. So it's easy to give, not easy, but we gave away equity instead of hiring a staff, right, at the time. We always had we worked with property management companies where they're the ones that are like the boots on the ground, especially because a lot of our buildings were outside of our radius. And that was what we focused on for the first 5 years. Everything was fit 30 minutes within our home. And then we started to say, okay, what makes sense financially for our investors? And our home area, New Jersey, if you will, didn't make sense anymore as an investment area or market. So we went from there to PA, and we started to say, okay, what partners do we need? Who do we need to help us grow this? And so one of the first partners we brought into the fold was actually my husband's cousin, who's still a partner of ours. And he had a bunch of real estate investing experience and lived 5 minutes from the next market that we looked in, which was Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And that was a great growing market. And it was our first kind of purchase of like over 40 units in one building. And he became one of our partners as the local expert there to like manage our property management team. And that was new for us. We were doing everything prior, and that was part of the problem. And then that kind of unfolded, building more partnerships with people to help you run the assets and find the deals and all the stuff that happens with buying large multi.
Did you make any mistakes when you were bringing people into the fold and hiring and expanding that you think like could be good advice?
Absolutely. I a lot of mistakes. I'd say, you start to learn what, partnerships are like a marriage. I mean, and we know how marriages end up, not to be mean, but we do, right? It takes a lot of work. Successful marriages take a lot of work and a lot of energy. And it takes two willing parties to be honest and to continually work on the relationship and also work on themselves, which quite honestly isn't for everyone. So a business partnership's the same, and you can go in with the best intentions, but it quickly gets ugly. So I've seen, and especially getting into larger buildings, so many people partner with people. That's a very common, it's like not like we're not unique in what we did. It's a very, very common. So and I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of speaking and a lot of workshops around this. And we even have a free guide, and I'm happy to give it in the show notes, about when you're looking at bringing a partner on, to be a partner for anything for that matter, but especially, our world of real estate, is really getting conversations around where are you aligned and then where are you different. Because of my background with personality profiles, I'm a big fan of assessments. And, you want to be different in so many ways, right? You want to be different in personality. You want to be different in skills. You want to be different in experience, but you want to be aligned with values. You want to be aligned with your goals. You want to be aligned with, how you're going to get paid, right? I mean, there's so many things, right, to talk about. So the areas of alignment and the areas of difference is really critical when you're bringing on partners. Some people, it's better that they're employees. And even now, as we scale our investing business, my husband has two key partners in the new projects. Everyone else is staff. Everyone else is hired. So, where some people have like 8 partners, that can get people's roles and lives change. And it's hard to unravel a partnership, an equity partner, right? It's not like you're fired, you're partner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think clear roles, not just clear, but clear, written down to the T roles and expectations that are part of the operating agreement from the beginning, and that get revisited at least on a yearly basis, is critical, hands down. Because if you're not revisiting those roles, life changes, expectations change, people's resentments increase, people aren't doing what they should be doing, or the business changes, or my expectations change, or someone has kids, and it gets very hazy. And that's when business partnerships can kind of get really muddy.
Oh, that was just a whole wealth of great advice and great information.
I think it's literally like a 3-page guide because Andresa and I have done a lot of speaking about it because we're partners and we've had to learn. My partnership with my husband was one, and we be married 17 years this year. So we're continually figuring that out. Yeah. But Andresa's probably the next person that my partner in InvestHER has been the journey of navigating a partnership again with somebody that you got that, it's not just oh, you do this and this, and we go our separate ways. Like, this is a business partnership that's in depth. And we learned a lot and had a lot of breakdowns, had a lot of breakthroughs. So we shared a lot of that in this guide. I think it's our therealestateinvestor.com/giveaway, but it's literally a 4-page freebie, great document with tons of questions that you should be asking yourself and your partners.
So let's talk about Andresa a little bit, and meeting her, and how you guys evolved to co-found the Real Estate Investor, basically community, with the cons and everything else that you do.
Yeah. And, it really happened. It was an interesting time when we both formed what we're up to. We both always had a shared passion of supporting. We were supporting each other. We had a mastermind, and we had a women's mastermind. We're like, let's pull together a group of women and just on a monthly basis help each other and share what's coming up, how we can help each other. So we had this very much a shared passion of, it was beyond a friendship where we wouldn't just go call each other and chit chat. We really just had this kind of shared camaraderie of, hey, how can we help each other? And we became really good friends. And then we created this mastermind. No money was exchanged. It was just a free mastermind, but it was for us, right? It was for us and a handful of women. And we had that for about 3 years. And then she was flipping property, and we connected originally because her and her husband were flipping property in Philadelphia. My husband and I were looking to do some flips in that market, and we connected over coffee and said, "What are you doing?" And that's kind of how that we actually met through Bigger Pockets, and it all started there. So she then had a few deals, and she said, "Hey, what if we partnered on these next few deals?" So then we partnered on a handful of flips and new construction projects over the years as well. So we became business partners through the real estate adventure, if you will, and investing, and had a lot of success with a lot of those projects, and kind of got a sense of what she brought to the table, what we brought to the table, and you start to get a sense of, you're learning about each other. Over the time to be talking about those projects and masterminding, we both would be like, where are the other women in this business? We'd go to conferences, we'd go to meetings. We're always the only woman in the room. And it would always be one of the few women there, I should say. We go to conferences, no one were speaking. Maybe there was one woman on a panel, maybe. They were never talking about money. They were talking about something that was more, unfortunately, stereotypical to what women should be talking about. We saw this.
What would that be? Like motivation, or
when you say you're in real estate, they assume you're an agent. You're a real estate agent. No, I'm an investor. So there's always assumptions when you bring up real estate. Where in real estate do you land? Andresa led the construction team. She was in construction. That's not, the common approach of what, most people think women do or are involved in. It's still, unfortunately, that way. I think it's getting better. I think our community has helped a tremendous amount, and all these communities that have come up. But I don't think it was always like that. And I've been in this a long time. You're always kind of the one of the few. Nothing wrong with that, but there's certain things that you want to talk about that you just want a community to talk about. You want a tribe to talk about what's working, what's not. So we said, okay, let's start a community. And that was our passion. And she was going through a divorce at the time. I just had my first child, and I was kind of dabbling back with my husband, but I still was a new mom and not sure what I wanted to do professionally, like really not just work with my husband, but something on my own. And so InvestHER also gave us both a place to give into our passions and also support other women in the process. So it was like, this fed us just as much as we were feeding women, if that makes sense. And I said to Andresa, this is a really bad time for you. She's like, no, this is exactly what I need. We need to start our podcast now. I said, okay, I have like a newborn. Let's do it. And so we started a podcast and interviewed just women. And that was 4 years ago when we started. And then that grew into a community of a Facebook community. And then we started a meetup in person and said, women need somewhere to go to help each other. And now we have 55 meetups across the country and about 15,000 women in our Facebook community. And then along the way, 2 years in, everyone's like, you need to be monetizing your community. And we're so passionate about what we're doing. So like, money's not our first thought, but you are running a business, right? So there is a key piece there. And we said, well, what do women want and need? We're not going to create something just to create it. So we started to get into that conversation with women. And then we launched our paid membership, which is what we call our Strive membership, which is just for experienced women who are looking for like masterminding and more group support, and from education to masterminding to coaching calls to all that sort of key pieces to help women along the journey, and they're not alone. But we didn't do that until about 2 years in. So we've been kind of, charging, if you will, for anything, a couple of years in to just create the community and to see what women wanted and needed. And if there was even a need, the last thing you want to do is create something that no one wants or needs.
And clearly people want and need it. Yeah. I mean, looking at the site, it looks amazing. And when did you host your first convention?
So we had a couple of virtual ones. We started in COVID. We did a virtual one right in the throes of COVID 2020. And that went over great.
Was it originally supposed to be in person, or was it always virtual? Or did you decide after?
We wanted to do it in person and we converted it to virtual, which was actually great to do, honestly, as a start. And then we did our first in person in June. And we had about
June this year, 2022?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, it looks great. I mean, I was looking at the pictures. It looks like quite an amazing turnout, especially as some people are still nervous about the pandemic, I think. And for your first, there's a lot of people. How many people showed up?
We had about 400 people there.
That was great.
Yep. We had about 30 companies sponsoring. And I think because we, and I don't want to say this isn't from an ego perspective, but when we walked in, all the women there were part of our community. So they were anxious to connect. And they were all so excited that they're giving us a standing ovation before we started. Right. Oh. And I mean that just sincerely, because the women were so connected to the community already because of the 4 years, right? This wasn't our first, hey, we're the InvestHER community. So I say that just because there's a real feeling of belonging there. And I think that's what we started our community about. We're very, very careful, how women are being treated, how they're speaking to each other, that we have each other's back. And that's the community we're building, whether you join our membership or whether you just post in our Facebook community for free, or literally you just listen to our podcast and you got something from it. It really, however you're interacting with us, we're not attached to, we're attached to really empowering women, to live a financially free and balanced life. And it's needed, still needed. And we still, there's so many ways that it's still needed for women.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really sounds like you nurtured a community, which you hear all the time, right, with the membership sites and communities, nurture the community. But you guys did it with no thought of money. This is something that's needed in the market. It's kind of a pun, but this is something that's needed, that people there's not enough. Did you find it frustrating sometimes to feel like you guys were some of the few women in the conferences and the stuff that you went to with Andresa? Because you said, it wasn't a big deal, but then I was thinking, but it had to have been a little bit of a big deal, right? It must have felt a little frustrating.
It was frustrating. There was conferences that I think for me, what I get frustrated about, or we've gotten frustrated over the years, is that there's no thought for people who are putting these conferences on from a diversity perspective, right? So whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, there's just, it's a bunch of white guys speaking, no offense. Right. And that's a problem. It's a problem from the perspective of why we created InvestHER podcast and why we interview only women. I get inquiries. I don't deal with them anymore, but I used to get inquiries of tons of men wanting to speak up. If you just looked into our podcast, you'd know that we don't interview men. I don't even respond. I almost want to respond with profanity, but then I'm that's a really negative use of my time. But we do that because, what was it? Oprah said when she saw Barbara Walters speaking and interviewing people, and she was she saw her doing that, and that opened up an ability. I see a woman interviewing other people on TV in a time that women weren't doing that, let alone an African-American woman, right? So that created this, I can do it too. And that's exactly what was really important to us, that we have all types of women, all different backgrounds. Our conference, we're really mindful of that. Who was speaking, the age demographic, ethnicity, how they got there, all those sort of things. That's really important. So women feel like I can see myself in them, in their story, and that's what we highlight. And that's what we're all about. Because I think that's only going to help change the pendulum of women wanting to live life on their own terms and not beholden to one way to do it. I want to be home with my kids. I want flexibility, but I also want to create value and build wealth. Yeah, you can do it all. And this is how you do it. This is one vehicle to do it, but, and this is the women who have done it, and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to tell you how, not for, $1 million.
Yeah. This is actually similar to this podcast. I was looking around trying to find something about women who had grown their business to 7 figures. And there were some articles here and there, like Forbes would feature someone in like maybe 500 words max, and like that. Actually, I've reached out and have interviewed some people from those articles, so I can't knock them. But, but I was finding podcasts, with women business owners and some high earners, but there wasn't anything like specific for 7 figures. And like, I wanted to get like a wide range of people, like people who do products, people who do, the real estate is interesting, service-based, like what can we do so other women can see that or listen to it and be like, oh, that story resonates with me. So it's very similar. So I love that. Tell me about it. Like when you reached your first $1 million, either with your Real Estate DeRosa Group or with InvestHER, how did that feel? Was it a cause for celebration? Did you even notice? Or were you just like so busy and go, go, go?
Yeah, no, for our real estate investing business, there was so many years, especially at the beginning, that we really were figuring it out, right? So we didn't just come into it with all this business experience, me and my husband. We kind of grew up in the business. I don't know how else to say it. I use that phrase a lot because we did. I feel like we were naive, we were green, and we had youth on our side. We had time on our side, and we just persevered. So that's how we were able to build our business. I don't know if everyone has that on their side. If I was starting now, I would have done so many different things, now in my 40s as I was in my 20s at the time. But I'd say that for us, we sold a building. We sold a couple of our big assets, and we had different lines of credit attached to those assets, meaning, my parents even put a lien on their property, and then we borrowed the money. It's like a line of credit. But that was tied to some properties. And I remember when we paid all that off, we sold some buildings, and we started to get into a really good rhythm and scale. We did stop and we did celebrate, and we're like, oh, you want to set yourself up financially in the right way. And in some ways we become more conservative, right? In other ways we've grown significantly, but on other cases you become a little conservative in the sense of like, you're just not willing to take those risks that you were taking, when you first started, because you just didn't know anything else, honestly. So I think that it was a celebration. And then we became a little smarter, a little like, okay, we learned this. What can we do now moving forward? We sold a building about 1.5 years ago. That was probably the biggest amount of money we've made in any sale of a building, because you make money, passively. You could be making money from a sale, right? There's all different ways. And we did celebrate. And then we said, okay, how does that change what we're doing? And how does that, how do we keep growing and keep investing in our business? And it's all those questions, right? And how do you make sure you get the most return on your money and all that good stuff? So we went away. I think we took a weekend away and celebrated. Okay. Because it's important to do that. And it's, you don't always celebrate. You don't always stop and celebrate, what you've done, where you've been. And it's, we beat ourselves up a lot in life as entrepreneurs. So you have to celebrate when you can, because we're sometimes our worst enemy because we could be doing it better or different.
Tell me a little bit, we were talking offline about, when you were in the red, how did that feel for you guys? Maybe with InvestHER too, because it sounds like with InvestHER, not so much because you were willing to put in so much time and not get paid, but more with like the real estate company. How does that feel? And how do you move past it?
Yeah. I think when we started, and what we've evolved to is, being really mindful of your time and what you're willing to do and not do. I think when we started, and something that we've gotten better with, is being mindful of like, what is my time worth? And I think when you start to not value your time, projects, to your point, can also, it's not just the project, it's also the time you're investing in it can kind of be in the red. There was buildings that we sold that we lost money, that we had a lender on the property. We paid the lender off. They were made whole, but we took the hit on the profit, right? And that's tough, right? When you've worked really hard, you've taken the risk. And so I think it all became a bigger picture of, where should we be spending our time? What is our real core genius? What are we good at? My husband and I are not operations people. I became a bit operational because my husband had like a 0 on that. And I'm not a great operations person. And here I'm someone who's really good at personality profiling, and we're making the mistakes that I counsel organizations, right, to do. So the money is tied to everything. I think companies thrive when the market needs what you're offering. And there's alignment, right, of core genius, people focusing on their strengths, and all those other kind of business musts. And I think I look back and we weren't doing a lot of those pieces. We were kind of doing whatever it took. I was doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing. Same with my husband. And we were dealing with certain challenges of kind of the economy and just making the wrong calls. So we, we just kept going. We persevered. We could have given up and not been building the business we're building now. And, we're able to take care of our family and all those sort of things and help a lot of people along the way. But we didn't give up, and we're just not those kinds of people. And we had projects we needed to finish, right? So there's sometimes you might be losing money in a project that needs to get done because you have a lender, or so we were, because we created a business that we work with other people, the perseverance and never giving up. It's not just him and I, right? It was more people.
Right.
So we have this deep, never giving up perspective, and we're always into solutions. But our projects have been streamlined, and, we're getting into really good assets, and our properties are doing well, and we have the right teams now. We made the right calls, and we built something that we're proud of that we didn't start with. But I think the idea of focusing and then getting better with something, the financial problems or challenges do decrease because you're mitigating your risk. And when you're all over the place, your risk is high, because how can you be great at everything? There's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be something you have to learn. So, all things I wish I knew when we started, but, learn them now, right? And as we grow InvestHER, we grow our different businesses, we're constantly asking, how do we mitigate the risk, right? And work with partners or people that can help us get there versus us having to figure it out. I don't know.
Can you share with us, this might be too vague of a question, I'm not sure. If you were a beginner real estate investor versus an experienced one, how much could you make per year and pocket for yourself, as I guess opposed to investing in the next property for women who are interested in this?
So there's different investing, call it niches, that are going to yield different type of money. So for example, you go out and buy a property and you flip it, right? You watch a couple of good HGTV shows, and you're like, I want to flip property.
That's me. I'm like, oh, it looks so easy. Okay.
Yeah. Now, technically investing, right? You're technically investing in something that's growing, right? That's why people invest in the stock market. They can invest in gold, crypto. There's so many different, quote unquote, ways to invest people's hard-earned money. So flipping technically is not necessarily an investment in and of itself where you're hands off unless you've built this flipping company. It's a little bit of like an active role. However, the thought process is that you can flip property and make a profit. You can wholesale properties where you're basically kind of going in between. You want a property. I got Susie who wants to sell her property, and people kind of wholesale the property to the end person and make a little money on in between. Then there's the rental world, right? You can rent out single family home. You can rent out a multifamily, a small, 4-unit building. You can go buy a property and go put it on Airbnb and start the short-term rental, process. And that's very, very popular. So there's so many little niches, if you will, from a short-term, long-term rental world. So to answer your question,
there is no answer. It's hard to know without the niche.
I think the bigger question is, I think we often counsel a lot of women, and that's the work we do, is that so many women are like, what market should I be in? Should I buy a single family home? Should I buy an Airbnb? Got some money to put aside. Great questions, but they're just not the first questions, right? The bigger question is, in what are your investment goals? Are you looking to plan for retirement and just looking, to reinvest? And you don't really need the money because you have a great job and you love it. And this is really just something on the side too, because you don't want the stock market and you want to just have another vehicle for your retirement. Or are you like, I hate my job. I don't want to work at that company anymore. I hate what I do. I've always dreamed of being on my own and building a company. And I love real estate, and I've done the due diligence, and this is for me. That's a different conversation, right? So if I'm trying to replicate my income and say, I'm making six figures. What will I need to do? It might be a mix of active work and passive work. How many rentals, right? How many rental properties yielding a certain amount each month has to get me to my goal. Rentals are like a little bit, right? So for many people, you might own them free and clear and you need 10 rentals. Mary might be highly leveraged and she's getting money from other partners. She might need 1,000 to get to her goal. It really totally depends on what your money goal is, your time. Some women want to be passive. They have no interest in construction. They could care less where they are in their life. They have young kids. I have no time for that. Well, then you might be a passive investor in real estate and earn 8-9% by partnering and in investing in a project. That's how we built our business with working people with like that. So the first question is, what type of financial, what type of money do I want to be making if I'm about to work, and what money do I have to use to get me that return? You might be, I've talked to women who have millions of dollars in their banks, earning them a crazy low percent when they could put that money, some of it, to work. Not a lot of women, but a few women I've talked to might have $1 million in savings. And they're like, I don't think that's the best use of my money. No, it's not. You could be literally passively investing with a team, vetting the team and making 8-9%. Come on.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the goal. But I think the big question is, where do I want to be in a few years? What kind of money do I want to be making? What kind of time do I want to be spending? What do I love to do? What are my skills? And we have a lot of those kind of like soul searching questions. We have those a lot in our free membership, even on our website, where you can just literally just do some soul searching for yourself. Or do you just want to buy a property, one every year? And that's what you want to do because you're building towards your retirement and you want to, get some tax advantages or tax benefits because you and your spouse are highly, W-2'd, and you're like, I know real estate really, because real estate helps with that and from a tax perspective. So depending on what bucket a person is in and what they're looking to do, then a certain niche makes sense. Does that make any?
It makes total sense. It just basically means my question was worthless.
No, it's actually no. Your question
no, it's fine. I'm just like, whoa. There's like, it always reminds me. There's so many layers to real estate, like so many layers, and like I think, if anything, if any woman is really interested in this after hearing it, they should definitely head to InvestHER, because I think that's going to really help them understand the different niches, the different opportunities, because really they're all just different opportunities based on where you are in life.
Correct. Absolutely. And you can be active, you can be passive. Sometimes people are like, oh, I want to buy the rental myself, when you really could have just been more passive in a project and made maybe the same amount of money. But it all totally gets to what you're doing and what you want to build. Some people don't want to build a business. They just want to have one property or two or 10, So it's, it really goes back to looking at what's important to someone, and money-wise, time-wise, skill-wise, energy-wise, living life on your own terms. What does that look like? Women on themselves can only answer that. Once you're clear on that, now we can help you, because there's probably 5 or 6 ways to get there.
Okay. That's good. So if you could distill your success down, you think, into one reason, why do you think you've been successful? What is that reason?
Never giving up. Just been really persistent, never giving up. And I'm very relationship oriented, I would say. So I think I have that as one of my greatest skills, is just building relationships, taking good care of people. But I'd say never giving up has to be the top. Just continually figuring it out, shifting, moving, pivoting, being honest with myself, but never giving up. So please share with us where people can find you online. We'll put all of it in the show notes. Anything like the giveaway you were talking about, that would be helpful too. Just lay it all out so it's easy for people. Yeah, absolutely. The Real Estate InvestHER.com has like a lot of our resources, in terms of our meetups. If there's the local meetups, our free Facebook community, our events that we're doing. Do a lot of free events as well for women. We had one on self-storage last week, because that's a interesting niche. But the giveaway I was referring to is the partnership question guide. It's our website, therealestateinvestor.com/giveaway. So it's literally just a helpful little, how-to around partners. And then in terms of like our actual real estate work that we're doing and the projects that we're up to, my husband and I, as well as InvestHER, because InvestHER is a partner on some of the deals. That's DeRosa Group, DeRosa Group.com. And you can kind of see the kind of, projects that we're involved in. And we have a lot of free resources on mostly multifamily. That's our niche. But that's a big one, especially if, buying multifamily, or if that's a niche that women have intrigue about. That's what we really know a lot about, because that's more of our business model.
And your Instagram, which was so cool.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to say
totally
that. Yes.
Creeping on your Instagram, because the reels were great. Just like you were like taking a run. Was that you taking a run?
Yes,
like, yeah. And you're just like giving advice in a parking lot. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. You just like have a thought and be like, oh, I'm going to make a reel about this. Is that
usually most of the
time. I love it.
Yeah.
And people are so curated on Instagram. Like, it was so refreshing to see. I was like, she probably just had this thought randomly. I was like, oh, let me film this while I'm, out and about.
and it's usually when after I run or after I work out, because I'm usually a little quicker on the uptake. But yeah, you can follow us at the Real Estate InvestHER on Instagram, and our podcast. I forgot to mention that, but we are published by the Bigger Pockets Network, which has the #1 real estate investing podcast. They publish 5 podcasts. We're one of them. And we release 2 episodes a week, a mini-sode and an interview. So that's our kind of bread and butter. It's our core. It's what we started with. And, that's something you can definitely follow along. And it's just, we interview all great women around investing, self-care, business, all of the above. So
love it. Love it. Thank you. What is one philosophy, mantra, or quote that you try to run your business by?
I would say the power of just taking a micro step, and people get so overwhelmed, especially hearing me talk about private money, probably on today's episode. I know when I get overwhelmed with new things, because there's new things we're embarking on, just moving the needle. And I think that's the way you kind of move through that is, how can I just move the needle today? How can I take one step towards my goal of buying a property or growing my business or scaling one thing today? And that builds momentum. It builds confidence, and you want to do more versus having a big goal and doing nothing and then beating yourself up. Because I know that's what a lot of women do. So I would say just the power of micro steps and moving the needle in a small way builds momentum.
I like that. I like that a lot, because it's true with my life. I know, because I have multiple projects too with my business, and it's like just doing one step a day. I actually feel really good. Even if it's just 20 minutes, I'm like, yes, okay, I'm moving forward just a little bit, just a little bit closer.
Yeah, rather than getting it all done, as we never do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and being on the show. There's part of me that kind of wants to have you back to talk about InvestHER more, because I think our audience, if you're ever interested, our audience would really like to hear about that membership base and how you grow it and what you do with that. So I don't know if
I'd love to
come back on.
I'd love to. Yeah. And we have a lot of events all the time about different topics from business to real estate. So, in our meetups, so we have building a community. And so there's a lot of ways to interact with that, but I'm happy to come back on whatever.
Yeah. I'd love to kind of like dissect that more in depth, like the little steps people can do to grow a membership community to what you've done. I think that could be really interesting.
Gotcha. From that perspective. Yeah.
Well, both. Both.
And we're still learning. But, I have so many different ideas about that, but yeah, you want to focus on an avatar and cultivate it. And we were the avatar. We are the avatar, right? So we're creating something that we can relate to versus 20 years ago, so, but anyway, but happy to go into more depth on that.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And then maybe we will have a part 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.